Hi, and welcome to Mom on Mute. I'm your host, Mindy. If you are an estranged parent, adult child, or somewhere in the middle, you belong here. Today we'll be interviewing Jessica Louise. Hi, Jessica. So just tell me where you fit into this estrangement. So you're estranged from people in your family, and you're also on both sides, right? You have two sisters. Who are you estranged from? Your mother?
I'm mostly estranged, low to no contact with most of my family right now. And it didn't start out that way, but over time, I've really had to take that time. And something I've noticed is that some relationships will come back in when that person has had the time and the space to do the work. A lot of the work I do right now is writing and coaching. I've worked with dozens of women in this space who have been no contact with an adult parent or have a child who has had to go no contact with them. So I've seen this from so many angles. It's true.
Your story is completely different, but I'm estranged from my mother, and then my daughter got estranged from me. And then I went into therapy about my daughter and realized my problem stemmed from my mother, the way my mother raised me. And that had I got therapy when I was a kid, or even in my early 20s, now that I'm 66, I probably would have made different choices if I was a healthier adult when I got married. And I would have not picked my husband. Had I made different choices and gotten well 40 years ago, I would be functioning on a different level at this point and not be in this position. I believe that there's a lot of people that feel that the generational dysfunction is passed down, and then they try to correct it, and then we overcorrect it.
Typically, the person ending up in therapy is not the problem. The person we usually see in therapy or mentorship first is often scapegoated and pushed out because they're starting to see the dysfunction and the patterns. And a dysfunctional family, even a dysfunctional family, can reach a state of homeostasis. When we get somebody,
What's that mean? Does that mean? I don't know what that
if say they're building a business, everybody's going to have a part to play in that business. In dysfunctional families, everybody's going to want their own business, their own platform, their own audience. And all we can truly do, and I teach this to my clients, is step away from the equation and look at the role that we're playing, right? How are we throwing gas on the fire? And sometimes we really do have to sever those connections, even if it's just temporarily, so that everybody can heal.
I think a lot of the moms that are my age that have children that went estranged don't understand what space looks like. Their kids say, I need some space.
And they want to go in harder. And we see this because in these types of enmeshment and dysfunctional families, that we struggle with boundaries, right? We're oversharing. We're telling everybody, maybe you have a problem and you go tell everybody in the family. And so once we start to set those boundaries or we don't have any boundaries, there's no area for healthy love, because love truly does require some conditions, right? It's like people want to talk about unconditional love, but we're not doormats. And unless we want to repeat that pattern, we've got to take a look.
I definitely agree with that. So a lot of the younger adult children that went no contact are your age. It seems to be the millennial children that are in their 30s, early 40s are the ones that seem to need the space. And a lot of the same issues keep coming up, but they keep presenting in different ways. Let's say you say to your mom, I want space, and your mom's, I'm not going to give you space because you're my baby and I can't not talk to you every morning. I have to say good morning to you every morning because I have a routine. And you're like, Mom, I love you, but I need to figure out some stuff for myself, and I don't need any background noise. I don't need any chatter. Your mother gets offended. So then your conversation with her turns into low contact and then goes to no contact. Isn't that the way it usually happens?
A lot of times the parent who's exhibiting a narcissistic tendency requires external validation. So they're looking to those children to fill that cup of emotional well-being. I think the boomers weren't really allowed that self-care. They were told to hustle, that you had to work hard. And then when they had babies, their babies suffered that consequence of mom and dad both having to work, and that hustle culture as the country was trying to scale wealth. But something that gets really missed is that connection with the parents and the children and going back to those boundaries. And so, if a parent didn't learn emotional intelligence growing up because maybe their parents survived the Great Depression, so they were very passive aggressive, they were probably very harsh with physical punishment and discipline. This was a huge thing. And so this kind of plays a role and is stored in the DNA and passed down. So that hypervigilance, that hypersensitivity, always waiting for the other foot to drop, that's some of that conditioning and that subconscious program. And so I think it's important because we were raised as women through the patriarch to overgive and overserve and people please. But that creates resentment in the person that's overserving because they're not getting their needs met. And so then when we look to our child to do that and we're moving into parenting and these kinds of things,
What is it? Can you explain? Wait, what's I can't even pronounce that word.
is essentially where we put the adult responsibilities on the child, right? So maybe chronic illness can really make a child feel like they've got to take care of the parent, or maybe the mom's in an abusive relationship. And so the child, we see this with boys, they don't want mom to get beat up, right? So they've got to step in. They take on more responsibility that children really shouldn't be taking on yet because their prefrontal cortex isn't even fully developed and they're doing adult things.
So how does that present later? Like that screws them up,
The
right?
people pleasing, the self-sabotage.
No, but the children that have to be adults when they're children in their teens, late teens,
Yeah,
early
that
20s.
can create a lot of resentment because what we're seeing with a lot of millennials then is that they're like 30, 35. They don't own a house yet. They're maybe still struggling to make money in a career. Maybe they've switched careers a lot of times. And so it's, hang on, you were so hard on me to do these things and follow this structure, but the structure is not working. Then we have this generation of people saying, oh, young people don't want to work and they're just complaining and it wasn't that bad. And then we have these other people who are traumatized and saying, hey, this isn't the same economy. This isn't the same village structure. When there were grandparents, there were cousins. And a lot of us don't have that because of the patriarchy pushing everybody to be in survival mode, right? Time to heal. Who has time to look at their own shit when you're working 60 hours a day for some corporation that if your kid gets sick and you need to call off, you're out the door? Or you give birth and you're immediately expected to go back to work. How can we bond with our babies? In other countries, we see these women having support and we see how that contributes to their economy long term, along with mental health and stability of children, having that trust solidified early on. Because that's what it comes down to is we're severing the trust in these families of the little soul thinking, I can depend on these people. And then they get 16 and they want to move out because they feel nobody ever saw them. But how could we see them when we ourselves as the parent are still carrying all these things that truly weren't even ours to carry?
So the boomers my age, I'm a late boomer, so
Sure.
I'm practically at the tail end. But the boomers that were raised by the silent generation, our childhood was be seen and not heard. If you're upset about something, go to your room and figure it out.
Exactly.
If we don't come home, they didn't know where we went. They never knew where we were. They had no clue where we were. There was no social media. There was no cell phones. If we were at a friend's house and they were looking for us, they'd have to get in the car and drive. And they were never interested in doing that. So my generation, the boomers, turned around in the 80s and the 90s, and we had so many opportunities for housing, for jobs, wealth. A lot of us were able to break out of the lower middle class cycle and get into the middle class or the upper middle class or even better.
A lot of you guys were like the last generations to work a job 30 years, right? That's unheard of now, like staying in the same company. My mom is a labor and delivery nurse. She delivered babies 30 years at our local hospital. And like that same job security doesn't even exist to my generation, right? These companies will not hesitate to. What are we seeing in Detroit? 1,500 workers are laid off because of the electric car thing. And so I think that there needs to be some compassion and some conversation about the fact that things change every 50 to 100 years. And that conversation and the way that we parent and the way that we engage with each other has to be reevaluated as well. The inflation's going up and consciousness seems to be evolving.
So the baby boomers then started wealth.
Yep.
And then we have children, and then we made poor choices on who we were marrying because we never got healed.
Drama.
We never got addressed the drama from our parents, and then we overcompensate as parents, and then we keep saying the same thing. The moms keep saying the same thing. They had so much more than me. What the mothers mean, what they had so much more than me, and they're not grateful, is that they got the opportunity. The parents my age got the opportunity to send their children to whatever schools they wanted to go to. I went to Europe when I was 18, but a lot of the kids did not see another country. They didn't go out of their state. We got divorced. A lot of us got divorced in our 40s, and that created a big problem. But I think that the kids your age, there's a lot of resentment for the parents, the way the parents brought them up. And I think the boundary thing, they don't understand the boundaries because they think that they did everything their parents didn't do and they were good parents. They think that's how they're perceiving it. Am I wrong in that?
And some psychology is coming out to show that good enough parenting isn't good enough for kids who have gone through complex trauma. And so when a child has gone through complex trauma, it's often unknowingly, often to the parent. We're not aware that we're traumatized.
So how would you define that trauma? What are you calling it?
Complex trauma.
Yeah.
So this is really just trauma that's maybe been ongoing or happened maybe ongoing since childhood, and it's starting to spiral where it started with the child was a victim, but then the child evolves into this complacent player in this game of self-sabotage, looking for that external validation. Recognizing those patterns can be helpful. It takes people having conversations.
How would you describe self-sabotage?
A lot in the entrepreneurial space when a woman's still carrying sister or mother wounding. And self-sabotage will look like getting a really great partner, and then your old wounding and conditioning starts to come up, and next thing you're going through their phone, or you're not communicating in a really healthy way, or you're feeling like you need to change something up instead of going deeper within yourself. Often another thing can look like getting a really great job opportunity and then we don't go after it, or we don't answer the email, or we don't start the podcast, and we just shrink and make ourselves play small. Often in dysfunctional dynamics, this will happen because we're afraid of what they're going to say. So this can come up a lot for us as adults. And it really plays a role on a subconscious level in the risks that we take. Because if your risk reward center and trust was severed as a child, authority can't be trusted and you have to stay in line and you can't take risks because risks equal danger, punishment, ostracization from the herd. You're going to always play small. I saw this when I became a best-selling author for the first time. I've written in 2 bestsellers and I have a 3rd coming out. My first one was called Entangled No More: Women Who Broke Free from Toxic Abuse and Are Building Empires. That was in 2022. And then I was in Shadow Alchemy in 2024, which is How to Turn Your Inner Darkness into Gold. I started as a meditation practitioner and a spiritual life coach, teaching people how to do shadow work, inner child healing, breath work, get back into their body, regulate their nervous system. And it blew up into business coaching after my first bestseller. I started helping other authors and practitioners get monetized using social media. There were so many great coaches out there who just didn't know how to get on video or push play or start making content and sharing their perspective. And it blew up into that.
So this particular space that you're in, the personal family situation, the estrangement, I believe that you need to live it to even talk about it. Do you believe that?
100%.
I mean, you could have 1,800 degrees and you can, if you don't have any experience under stranger.
Honestly, I prefer to learn from people and mentors who have lived it, who have really been in the belly of the beast. Because, like you said, all the clinical textbooks in the world, you can't wrap your mind around it. Just because you've gone through it doesn't mean that you're qualified to necessarily hold space and coach others, because you can re-traumatize people with this stuff. And that's partly why I became a coach, is because when I got into this space, the help that I needed didn't
Exist. There is no data on it. They're starting to now, like,
yeah,
for instance, you can be a coach or you could be a therapist for somebody that's addicted to alcohol or drugs, because
sure.
there's so much research on it. There's just, you don't literally need to be a drug addict or an alcoholic to be a therapist in that field, because there's so much learning material on it.
I still think it does help.
Yeah, I do believe
Because
it
the
does help.
addiction portion of the physiology is such a chokehold. But lived experience is really potent. And I truly believe that's where we're going as a society, and mentorship is we learn faster by modeling, and especially having someone that's gone before us that is saying, hey, I've been in the belly of the beast. I've escaped out of this. I've navigated this, even though it was difficult. And I think that's something we could really share about today, too. We've talked a lot about the why, but how getting through it, and what does that look like on an individual basis? I think it's going to look different for everybody. You've really got to trust your intuition, right? And decide, when is it time to go? When is it time to reach back out? And then I guess it comes down to self-expression and acceptance, that being okay if they don't come back. And what does
Right.
that look like for you moving forward? And then a lot of people can't even visualize that. And so they end up stuck in the loop with a husband or a child. I've seen it firsthand in my own family, the ones that won't remove themselves from the game.
When my daughter went no contact 5 years ago, there was nothing. There was no information. My therapist wasn't no contact. She didn't really understand it. It's confusing. I think the mothers feel like they're done. After the kid goes no contact, the mothers feel like they lose their identity. It's sad, because they've spent their whole life being a mom, and now their kid's not talking to them, and they're embarrassed, humiliated, and they can't get out of the way of themselves. So then they go into all these groups, and they just all basically support each other in their sorrow without any conclusions.
And they're validating each other's feelings, almost like a new version of the dysfunctional family they just left. Because I've seen it too. A great example is the doormat mom. Have you seen the doormat mom?
Yes.
And she doesn't really take accountability. She throws her kids under the bus and doesn't say, I was a tough mom, or I had it tough too. And you can see it in her face. She doesn't want to take accountability or learn. She's comfortable in that bubble of women telling them that their children are extreme, and it's not valid. I think if it takes a lot for a child to go no contact. I think you asked earlier, is it just one thing? And I don't think it is.
Not one thing.
Children are wired to love their parent unconditionally, regardless. Disabled parents, abusive parents, addicted parents, it's in our cells to love that parent. But I think when you have an unhealthy dynamic, it's not just the parent, right? It's that entire family unit, like validating that experience.
The opposite of validating, basically. So when the whole I found in my family, the whole family dynamic, they pick a team, like they pick a side, and then they create the narrative around the side.
And there's a scapegoat who all the problems revolve around that one person. But
let me ask you this question. I've been meaning to ask a bunch of people this question, and we gloss over it. If there's a scapegoat in the family, and the scapegoat removes himself because the scapegoat gets healthy and they get help, and they realize that they had some problems, but really the problems stemmed from their childhood, and it was their mother and their narcissism and all of that. What happens to the family when the child removes herself?
That family will find a new scapegoat, and the old scapegoat often becomes the black sheep. So they become usually the person that excels, that these are the people that might be the first ones to go to college, or the first ones to obtain wealth, or the first ones to do something really profound with their life that nobody else in the family has done. And it is the catalyst. And I believe that there's something that happens with the consciousness experiencing such a low frequency. All they can do is go up from that. The opposite of that negative vibration is an even higher one.
But what I'm saying, my mother and my sister, I'm just going to use me as an example. My mother and my sister teamed up on me since I was little. My father was removed, and it was just my mother and my sister and I. My mother and my sister tried to make me think I was crazy. Everything was wrong with me. They took me to therapists, psychologists, psychiatrists, after one after another, and nothing stuck. So when they just kept trying to make me the villain, and then I went no contact, and now my mother and sister live together. Is their relationship like, how are they functioning without the dysfunction of me? Like, where are they putting that
There's still going to be dysfunction, but obviously they are, again, remember we go back to that homeostasis. So they've found a baseline of comfort that works for them at that level of dysfunction. So there's still going to be triangulation. There's still going to be enmeshment. And what happens is when they want to try to simulate a child into the family dysfunction, these are the kids that we see in therapy because they're not conforming. And so,
that
it feels, hey, my daughter went no contact with me and I've got stuff that I need to work on. We've got to not, as women, take all of the blame. You were also a victim of abuse, of triangulation, of enmeshment. Until they're in therapy and they're really looking at it and willing to take an honest look, it's one-sided. We can't force, we can lead a horse to water, but we can't make it drink.
For the first 4.5 years, I did not understand how I played a part in this, other than I wrote my narrative of what I thought happened, which a lot of it did happen. And since I've been doing this, talking to therapists and people like you and other mothers and children and educated on the subject people, I'm starting to take a look at myself, and I'm starting to feel that I'm not completely responsible, but there were things that I did that I could have done differently, and that I did do this. The things that I did were subtle, but they added up. And it wasn't one thing. It was a bunch of little things that made my daughter have to pick a team. And one of us had to go because we couldn't live harmoniously together with her new family. It was not going to work. In order to keep her family not chaotic, she needed to remove me. And I understand that now. Had therapy 40 years ago, I would not have. I guess what I'm trying to say is that while I'm going through this, I'm learning more about myself and what I contributed, what I could have done differently. And the version of myself that I am now is so much better than the version I was 5 years ago. And the person I am now is a good person, and I like who I am now. And I feel like it's turning me into a better friend, a better mother to my other children. I feel like it's healthy for me. And it's a shame that it happened so late. And I have some regret with that. I feel like a lot of the women don't even get to the place where they can look at themselves. And it's sad because it's not all one-sided. I don't think it's a trend, and I don't think it's an epidemic, in my opinion. I think it's just coming to the forefront now because of social media and more communication. I think that the people like me that was no contact with my mom for 50 years, I never told anybody that.
There's so much shame that people carry behind that because it's so abnormal or natural, again, to that physical biology that we're coded and we're on a DNA cell level, that it's not just social media, but it's becoming enough of us that it's because it's not easy, right? Nobody wants to do it. Everybody wants to have a community. And so I think that it's sad what's happening, but I think it's mandatory for others to understand so that we can make these changes as parents. My oldest is 17 now, my youngest is 6, and I am mortified to have them hate me when they grow up.
Is that a
Yeah.
concern?
Yeah.
So
And even though I know I've done so much work, my goal is not just to survive motherhood, but to actually have recognition that these are going to grow up to be adults. They're going to remember what type of mom they had. And so I want to be mindful of how they remember me. And that doesn't look like people pleasing and overindulging them, but rather setting those healthy boundaries and communicating in a different way than I did. Sitting down and saying, hey, I didn't like the way that I responded or reacted the other night when you left your muddy boots on the kitchen floor. I should have asked you patiently. Little things like this. I'm mindful to have these conversations with my kids because I'm not perfect. I live alone with 4 children in America. I'm an entrepreneur. It can be chaos. But I think that just being mindful of it, making sure that I'm supporting myself, that I have women around me who get it, that are uplifting and not competitive or judging me. And then having these conversations with safe spaces to say, I'm having a hard time communicating with my sister. I feel like having these spaces have helped more women reclaim that sovereignty and realize that they're not broken, but we've got some things to fix as a society.
Yeah, so your generation is conscious that the no contact thing is something that could happen to them.
Yes.
Whereas my generation
Was unheard of. That's your parent. You respect elders. You don't talk back. Even just mentioning something to a boomer family member in my family to this day, I will get met with defensiveness,
like
deflection. You did this, then we shut down and we're going to move away. So I think that getting used to having uncomfortable conversations, not from a place of judgment, and not from a place of speaking to the person and their character, but really speaking to the behavioral patterns. When you do this, it makes me feel like this, rather than you're a narcissist. It can help.
but
Just a moment, have a seat.
so you think that I can't imagine it being in the front of mind while you're raising your children. This just came out of left field for so many thousands and thousands of moms. And it's not funny, but the fathers, the dads, they're nowhere to be found. I'm trying to reach out to dads. They will not talk to me. Dads are
All the
not.
men are silent right now. It's almost a bit maddening on multiple topics in the world. The men are silent. And I feel like that, oh my God. And so I feel like this comes down to the patriarch. We've moved into a male centered society rather than a child prioritizing society, recognizing that what happens to children determines what kind of adult they're going to be. And as parents, there's things that are going to happen that we can't control, but there's better data and there's better tools available for the boomers. For example, I know my dad says to this day, like, depression is a choice. No, we know now that depression is actually like a disruption of the gut biome. It's not even like in the brain. It's
We had
hard to have a
insane asylum.
conversation with
Jessica, you don't
someone.
even understand. 2 miles from my house, there was a humongous complex called, I can't remember what it was called. It was a mental institution. They housed people that had any type of mental, not anything. I'm talking about like autism, whatever.
Bipolar, ADHD.
Whatever. If your parents didn't want you, they just institutionalized you. They were state run institutions. Yeah. They're freak shows now. Tours in some of them now. And there's documentaries about them where they get no service. They just get lobotomies and crazy stuff. And it was a joke when we were growing up. If you don't behave, I'm going to drop you off at Byberry. It was weird. Right. They don't have any of that now. There's none of those big institutional complexes. And they also had like tunnels built underneath where they could like transport. Do you know anything about that?
My mom here in Kalamazoo, there was one called like Pine Rest or something, and they set runaway teens, right? If you were a runaway teen back in the 70s and 80s, you would be sent to one of those places. And nobody was looking at what's going on to this child at home. A lot of them were being sexually assaulted,
major abuse
going on. And so I think that was a lot too, is that we haven't protected children from sexual abuse. And so that's a huge thing culturally, that a lot of the women that I see, I know for me, my parents did not prosecute abusers. There was not even a conversation when I was assaulted. And I know that I held on to resentment for that why didn't you protect me? I was a child. And then to see some of them still have relationships with these people.
Stay away from the pervy uncle at Thanksgiving. There's a lot of calm.
And like, when are we going to start protecting children and getting rid of these? Instead, we were forced to give him a hug, sit on his lap. And so I think as a culture shifts, it's shit or get off the pot. And if they don't, I think that your generation, the best thing that they can do is let us lead and then love and accept us as we are and where we're from, not trying to put us back in that mold of how you guys thought it was supposed to be, and accepting that way actually was sold to you as a lie as well. It's really hard.
We grew up with where the mother wore a dress and an apron, and she came to the door with a martini when he came home. The Don Drapers, the Mad
Right,
Men.
and they built wealth and they had assets, but look at the cost, the relationships, their children's mental health, their own health.
Everything was male dominated. Everything was male dominated. Still today, I don't want to get into politics at all, but it's so male dominated.
But I feel like it's all playing a role in what we're seeing today. And it's really a lot of women reclaiming that and that sovereignty. For a long time, it's going to look like severing ties with old ways of being, old ways of thinking. To the ones that are really in the belly of the beast of estrangement right now, keep working on yourself, keep your faith, and don't work on it yourself from a place of the child's going to finally choose me. Recognize the child also has healing and work to do, and you can't force them to do that work. All we can do is work on ourselves, and then they might be able to come back into our lives. And often as they start to come back in, they need us to have done that inner work, because we're going to be meeting them at a place where they're going to need that grace.
I agree. The parents don't understand that when the children get married, their new family, their husband becomes the priority.
And that's healthy, and that's how it should be. They're building a new family unit and they're leaving that old one. And I think that's another thing, is that wanting to be really in control. And this is something I'm mindful about. And I talk to with my son, who's 17. I say, someday you're going to get married and it's not just going to be us anymore. And we want to make sure that you select a partner who or wants that healthy dynamic of what we have a goal in mind. Because it can be very difficult too when, a child gets married and then they see a different family dynamic, and then suddenly, shit, your mom's toxic. And it's okay. But there are ways that we can still have relationships, and it looks like low contact, right? It's different for everybody. But if you're getting really triggered around your family, or distancing yourself, set boundaries. Like I've had to say to my mom, if you talk about my business or my parenting or my housekeeping, the conversation is over and I'm going to have to ask you to leave, because those are some things that she will just nag on me.
She says, I don't like this, I don't like that.
It'll be like, what are you doing with the toys? Are you going to go through the toys and organize the toys? Or what are you doing with these summer clothes? Are you going to donate these summer clothes? What are you doing with the toys in the yard? Are you going to put away? The kids have left these toys out in the yard. So it's always these like passive aggressive, and never asking me like, so what are your goals for the business? Or is there anything I could do? Why don't I come over and the kids and I will tidy up their toys and organize? Or could I drop that off to the donate center for you? It's always just pointing out what I'm not doing fast enough, making you do it. And that breaks a person down.
She makes you feel less than, and then you don't want to be around her.
Exactly. And I've just had to start setting boundaries. She's gotten into therapy. It's gotten a bit better, but I've been on this journey about 5 years. I went from the golden child to the black sheep. On this journey alone, building my business. And it was only just until this last year when I said, I'm not going to be able to have any contact with you if something doesn't change. I said, I'm going to need changed behavior or nothing.
But you at least gave her a conversation about it. Yeah, but you gave her a conversation. A lot of these moms aren't getting any feedback. They're just, they see them on Monday and on Tuesday, they're blocked on everything. There's no conversation.
And I think some of that can be like spiritual bypassing and like disassociating. And if there's really going to be healing taking place, that conversation does have to eventually happen.
Right. I'm so sorry. I'm not downing the mothers, but I think that people want immediate resolutions, immediate explanations. And a lot of these kids don't know why they feel this way, and they need to work it out in their own head before they can communicate it. So giving them time and space, I think, is healthier. It's new. And I think that there's so many trial and error making mistakes now. There's people that are creating workshops that are like saying you got to write amends letters and you got to do this, and you got to take responsibility for everything. There's just so much conflicting information that's being
And as a
fed.
culture, we really want instant gratification, right? We watch a couple videos and we self diagnose or we feel like we've got a grip on it. But healing takes time. And sometimes
Change takes time.
exactly. And just allowing that. And I think a lot of it comes down to trust and faith, and having faith that if it's meant for you, it's going to happen. And that sometimes there's things that are happening along the journey and that the universe is moving through us. And there's things that, like you said, you're not the same person that you were when you started this estrangement
Right.
5 years ago. And so there's so much that had to happen in between that time for you to become this person.
Yeah, there's
Right?
a lot
And
of changes.
we often forget that journey is where that resilience and that strength and that structure is truly built, right? Is through going through those motions and allowing ourselves to sit in that discomfort.
That's the key. Sitting in the discomfort is sitting with the feelings, just no reaction.
Fix it, not trying to judge it, just allowing it to be and allowing that time to pass, because time really is a healer of a lot of wounds as well.
Exactly.
And sometimes people just need time to grow.
Plus, you go through all these stages. You go through anger.
Absolutely.
And some of the uncomfortable stages lead you to do things that you normally wouldn't do and that you're ashamed of. And there's just a lot of newness and uncomfortableness with the whole thing. Redefining the family in 2026 is something the boomers did not think was going to be a thing. It's sad because there's a lot of hurt. And the reason why I want to do this is because I think it's really important that if some people just listen to this, start to get feelings and feel that maybe they were wrong or could fix this or could have a conversation or the moms could need therapy, whatever comes out of this, I think there can be some good. If we can understand what's happening here, there's possibilities for some reconciliation with somebody, or at least
preventing it happening with your grandchild or something. Maybe there's parents watching who notice their own children are repeating these patterns and they're feeling like, gosh, I know that this is a result of their childhood and I want to bring this to them. And so it's not just children. And I know that my mom really struggles with over serving and over pleasing. And I think it starts with women just saying no, starting to say no to things instead of being a good girl and saying yes to everything. Because in the end, that is going to cost you potentially the relationship with your children, not having boundaries, right? And trying to be their friend. Children actually inherit our nervous system, our patterns, our programming. And so until we heal that, we're just passing that down and projecting that onto others. And when we do heal that, we heal all timelines, past, present, and future. And so, to anybody listening to this who is just feeling like hopeless and that they're so lonely and everything looks really dark and dense right now, there is something that is going to come out of this for you. Personal growth and expansion of your own wisdom and the role that we play in our own suffering. And that is how we change the world, is through changing each one of ourselves from within, not pointing the fingers and just blaming or being a victim, right? And saying, because we all go through really terrible things, but, and especially collectively. But I think what you do with that and how you overcome, that's what truly says the most about someone's legacy. So it's been able to come on and chat with you today.
I really appreciate it,
I
Jessica.
love your sign too.
Do you like the name?
I love it.
It's cute.
Where did you get that printed?
I designed it with my producer, and then I just had Max make me the sign. One thing I want to say to you before you go, I'm in Michigan.
Me too.
I know, you're in Kalamazoo. We go to Chicago like once a month, and we always pass Kalamazoo. And when we're driving, I always look up, where's the best restaurant in Kalamazoo? I will call you and you will direct me to a good place to go to in Kalamazoo.
Oh God, I know so many good ones.
It's nice there.
It's lovely. There's a lot of breweries. There's a nice art district downtown. It's very diverse.
It's a cool area.
I actually live in Colon now, so I'm in the magic capital of the world. I'm about an hour south from Michigan, closer to the Indiana border, but I was born and raised in Kalamazoo, and I went to school for sculpture and art there.
I'm an artist.
Did a lot of performing, and so I love Kalamazoo. So we don't go as much now because we're closer to Battle Creek. That's only 30 minutes for me, opposed to an hour drive with 4 little ones.
Yeah, Bloomfield, West Bloomfield. So I'm
okay. Yeah, perfect.
All right, thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Have a great day.
You probably a photo and a bio.
Yeah, yes, I will contact you after.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
So nice to chat with you today.
Thank you. It was a pleasure meeting you.
Good luck.
Thank you again for coming on our show. And for our audience at home listening, you can apply to tell your story, listen to all episodes, and connect with us on social media at momonmute.com.